The cargo ship shuddered violently as it plunged through the atmosphere of planet XO 339. Tom gripped the controls with white knuckles, fighting to keep the failing vessel steady. Warning lights flashed across his console, and the smell of burning electronics filled the cockpit. "Come on, you stupid piece of junk," he muttered, watching as the ground rushed up to meet him. The ship's hull groaned under the stress, pieces of the outer plating breaking away in the planet's thick, purple-tinged atmosphere. Half a kilometer away, another ship was experiencing the same fate. Its crystalline pilot, known simply as Crystal, worked frantically to redirect power to the failing engines. Unlike Tom's bulky cargo hauler, Crystal's diplomatic vessel was sleek and advanced, but equally helpless against whatever force had dragged them both down. The strange energy pulse had come without warning, somehow disabling both ships simultaneously. Now, as they plummeted toward the planet's surface, their paths were about to cross in ways neither could have imagined. Tom's ship hit first, skidding across the rocky terrain in a shower of sparks and debris. The impact threw him against his restraints, knocking the wind from his lungs. Metal screamed against stone as the vessel carved a deep groove into the planet's surface, before finally coming to rest. Crystal's ship landed more gracefully but was no less damaged. It spun like a leaf in the wind before crashing into a cluster of strange, crystal-like formations. The impact shattered both the formations and large sections of the ship's outer hull. For several minutes, only the sound of settling debris and hissing machinery broke the alien world's silence. Tom was the first to emerge, climbing out through his ship's emergency hatch. He wore his environment suit, a sturdy but well-worn piece of equipment that had saved his life more than once. The suit's readings immediately warned him about the toxic atmosphere and dangerous radiation levels. "Perfect," he said to himself, checking his suit's oxygen supply. "Just perfect." He spotted the other ship almost immediately. Its design was unmistakably alien. All smooth curves and translucent materials that seemed to glow from within. As he watched, a section of its hull shifted and opened, revealing a tall, crystalline figure in what appeared to be some kind of protective field. Crystal emerged cautiously, their crystalline body refracting the harsh sunlight. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, with a form that seemed both solid and somehow fluid at the same time. The protective field around them hummed softly, adapting to the hostile environment. The two crash survivors stared at each other across the gap between their ships. Neither moved for several long moments, each assessing the other and their situation. Tom broke the silence first, his voice carrying through his suit's external speakers. "Well, this is just great. I don't suppose you had anything to do with that energy pulse." Crystal's response came as a series of musical tones that were quickly translated by their field's communication system. "I was about to ask you the same question, human. This situation seems unusually convenient." Before either could say more, a distant roar echoed across the landscape. Both turned to see a massive dust storm approaching from the horizon, its edges tinged with an unnatural green glow. "We need shelter," Tom said, already scanning the area. His eyes locked onto a dark opening in a nearby cliff face. "There. Looks like some kind of cave system." Crystal's crystalline form shifted slightly, a gesture that might have been uncertainty. "Those formations are artificial. This is not a natural formation. Right now, I don't care if it's artificial, natural, or someone's summer home," Tom replied, checking his suit's damage indicators. "That storm hits us, we're dead. And I'm pretty sure neither of us wants to die on this rock before figuring out what brought us down." Another roar, closer this time. Crystal's protective field flickered briefly. "Agreed. Though I suggest we maintain our distance once inside. I have sensitive cargo." Tom laughed darkly. "Yeah, that makes 2 of us." They grabbed what supplies they could carry from their ships and headed for the cave entrance. Behind them, the storm approached with unnatural speed, as if chasing them. Just as they reached the entrance, Tom's suit registered a massive spike in radiation. "Move," he shouted, pushing ahead into the darkness. Crystal followed close behind, their crystalline form providing a soft glow in the darkness. The storm hit seconds later, its howling wind carrying particles that ate away at the rocks outside. As they caught their breath in the relative safety of the cave, both realized their situation had just become much more complicated than a simple crash. Someone, or something, had wanted them here, and they were about to find out why. The cave's darkness pressed in around them, broken only by the soft glow of Crystal's form and the lights from Tom's suit. The storm outside continued to rage, its howling wind carrying particles that could strip flesh from bone in seconds. "We need to do something about light," Tom said, checking his suit's battery levels. "Can't rely on our current sources forever." He dug through his emergency pack, pulling out a handful of chemical light sticks. Crystal watched him with interest. "Your primitive technology is surprisingly practical. My own light generation requires significant energy." As if to prove the point, their glow dimmed slightly. Tom cracked several light sticks, casting a gentle green glow around them. The light revealed smooth, unnaturally straight walls that definitely hadn't been carved by nature. Strange symbols lined the surfaces, their patterns familiar to Crystal. "These markings," Crystal said, moving closer to the wall. "They resemble ancient scripts my people discovered in our early space exploration." Their crystalline hand traced the symbols. "But these are older, much older." Tom was barely listening. He had switched to survival mode, arranging their supplies and checking what they had. "That's fascinating, but right now we need water, food, and a way to make this place safe." He looked up at Crystal. "Do you even eat?" "I absorb minerals and process certain energy frequencies," Crystal replied. "But you are correct about security. My sensors detect movement deeper in these tunnels." As if on cue, something skittered in the darkness beyond their light's reach. Tom immediately pulled out a sturdy hunting knife, another primitive tool that made Crystal's form shift in what might have been amusement. "Your species relies so heavily on physical tools," Crystal observed. "We evolved beyond such needs." Tom grinned behind his helmet. "Yeah. And how's that working out for you right now?" Before Crystal could respond, a creature burst from the darkness. It was the size of a large dog, but its body was covered in metallic scales. Its eyes glowed with an internal light similar to Crystal's. Tom didn't hesitate. He moved with practiced efficiency, using his knife to deflect the creature's first lunge. The blade sparked against its scales, but the creature retreated, surprised by the resistance. Crystal raised their hand, generating a defensive energy field, only to have it flicker and die. "My energy reserves are too low," they admitted, their tone carrying a note of concern. "Get behind me," Tom ordered, keeping his eyes on the creature. These things usually hunt in packs. Sure enough, two more creatures emerged from the shadows. They moved with an unnatural coordination that made Tom's skin crawl. Their eyes seemed to analyze the situation, showing an intelligence that no natural predator should possess. Tom backed up slowly, keeping himself between the creatures and Crystal. "Any helpful advanced alien insights about these things?" Crystal's sensors whirred. "Their genetic structure appears artificially enhanced. These are not natural life forms. They're engineered predators." "Great," Tom muttered. He reached into his pack without taking his eyes off the creatures, pulling out a flare. "Let's hope they kept their natural instincts." He struck the flare, and brilliant red light filled the tunnel. The creatures recoiled from the sudden brightness. Taking advantage of their confusion, Tom grabbed Crystal's arm. "This way." They'd retreated deeper into the tunnel, but not before Tom caught a glimpse of something that made his blood run cold, a symbol on one creature's scales that matched the markings on the wall. They ran until they reached a larger chamber. Here, the artificial nature of their shelter became undeniable. The room was circular, with what appeared to be ancient control panels lining the walls. A soft light emanated from crystals embedded in the ceiling, crystals that looked remarkably similar to Crystal's own structure. "This is impossible," Crystal whispered, their form resonating with shock. "These formations, they're like a primitive version of my species' technology." Tom was already working to secure the chamber's entrance. "Well, that explains why those creatures didn't follow us. They're guardians, aren't they? Keeping something in or out." Crystal moved to one of the ancient panels, their form glowing brighter as they absorbed energy from the room. "This facility, it's older than my civilization, than your civilization, but somehow it combines elements of both. Both our governments knew about this place," Tom said grimly. "That's why we were carrying classified cargo. Question is, what did they want us to find?" The crystals in the ceiling pulsed once, and ancient machinery hummed to life around them. Their answers were about to begin. Ancient machinery hummed to life around Tom and Crystal, casting the chamber in a pale blue glow. Holographic displays flickered into existence, showing symbols and diagrams that looked both alien and strangely familiar. Crystal moved from panel to panel, their crystalline form reflecting the ancient lights. "These systems, they're responding to my presence, but they're also calibrated for human genetic patterns." They turned to Tom. "Come here. Place your hand on this surface." Tom approached cautiously, keeping one eye on the chamber entrance where they'd escaped the engineered predators. He pressed his gloved hand against the indicated panel. Nothing happened. "Remove your glove," Crystal suggested. "Direct contact might be necessary." Tom hesitated, checking his suit's readings. "Air's still toxic." "This chamber has been cycling atmosphere since we entered," Crystal replied. "My sensors indicate it's now safe for human biology. These systems seem designed to accommodate both our species." Slowly, Tom unsealed his helmet. The air tasted old and metallic, but breathable. He pulled off his right glove and pressed his bare hand against the panel. The room erupted with light. A massive hologram filled the center of the chamber, showing a double helix DNA strand spinning slowly. Beside it, a crystalline structure similar to Crystal's own form rotated. "This is a genetic research facility," Crystal said, their tone filled with awe. "But the date stamps on these files, they're over 100,000 years old." The displays shifted, showing planet after planet, species after species. Some Tom recognized, others were completely alien, but they all seemed to follow similar patterns of development. "They were running experiments," Tom said, watching the data flow past, "testing different evolutionary paths." He pointed to one sequence. "Look, early humans. And there, your species." Crystal's form pulsed with agitation. "This suggests both our species were engineered, guided along specific developmental paths." More data appeared, showing what looked like progress reports. Tom's natural pattern recognition kicked in. These aren't just experiments. They're looking for something specific, testing different combinations, different traits. The hologram zoomed in on human DNA, highlighting certain sequences. Next to it, Crystal's species structure showed similar patterns. "Adaptability," Crystal said suddenly. "They were testing for adaptability. My people's ability to change our crystalline structure, your species' remarkable capacity to survive in different environments." Tom moved to another panel, his bare hand activating more displays. "Here's where it gets interesting. Reports of failures and successes. But their definition seems backward. They marked highly stable, predictable development as failure, and marked unexpected mutations and adaptations as success." Crystal finished. "The exact opposite of what my people would consider ideal." A new display activated, showing footage of various disasters, massive extinction events on different worlds. Tom's stomach turned as he realized what he was seeing. "They weren't just observing," he said grimly. "They were testing responses to catastrophe, seeing which species could adapt and survive." Crystal moved to examine the data more closely. According to these logs, most species followed predictable paths, either complete extinction or evolution exactly as planned. Their form dimmed slightly. "Including my own people. We became exactly what they designed us to be. Logical, ordered, predictable. But humans didn't, Tom said, reading the data. We were marked as their greatest success because we kept surprising them. Every time they thought they knew what we'd do. You did something completely unexpected, Crystal finished. These predators outside, they're not just guardians. They're another test. The facility is still active, still running its protocols. Tom turned to the sealed cargo container he carried from his ship. That's why both our governments knew about this place. Why they wanted us to crash here. He opened the container, revealing sealed data drives. They wanted us to find this, but they couldn't risk doing it officially. Crystal's own sealed cargo container hummed softly. Because finding this changes everything. The rivalry between our species, our different approaches to technology and development. It was all part of the experiment, Tom said. And it's still running. The facility's lights pulsed again, and new data began streaming across the displays. The ancient systems hadn't just been waiting for them. They had been scanning them, analyzing their reactions, their cooperation. They weren't just discovering the facility's secrets. They were becoming part of its final test. A deep rumble shook the facility, causing dust to fall from the ancient ceiling. Tom and Crystal exchanged glances as the security screen showed more predators gathering outside their chamber. They're not just gathering, Crystal observed, their form pulsing with concern. They're organizing. Look at their movement patterns. Tom watched the screens, his years of experience as a cargo pilot helping him spot the tactical formations. They're not hunting anymore. They're herding us. He pointed to different groups of creatures on the display. See, they're blocking all routes except that one. The predators had multiplied. Now there were at least 20 of the metallic-scaled creatures, their glowing eyes all focused on the single unblocked corridor leading deeper into the facility. They want us to go that way, Crystal said, analyzing the facility's maps they'd discovered. That path leads to something marked as primary testing chamber. Another rumble shook the room, stronger this time. One of the ancient display panels sparked and went dark. We can't stay here, Tom said, checking his suit and weapons. This section is becoming unstable. He looked at the sealed cargo containers they'd brought. We need to move, but those are too heavy to carry. Crystal's crystalline form shifted, creating a small compartment. Place your data drives within me. I can safely store them. Tom raised an eyebrow. That's surprisingly trusting of you. These circumstances require adaptation, Crystal replied, using his own species' strength as an example. We must evolve beyond our program behaviors. After securing their crucial cargo, they faced the only available exit. The predators waited beyond, their metallic scales gleaming in the facility's lights. I've recharged enough to maintain a defensive field, Crystal said, but it won't last long. Tom checked his remaining supplies. 2 flares, his knife, and a portable welder from his emergency kit. Then we make every second count. These things might be engineered, but they're still predators. They have instincts we can use against them. They moved into the corridor. The predators followed but kept their distance, maintaining their herding formation. Their eyes glowed brighter now, almost pulsing in sync with the facility's own power systems. They're connected to the facility, Crystal realized, scanning them. Their genetic code is being actively modified. They're evolving in real time. That's why they're getting smarter, Tom said, watching one predator solve a complex path problem by signaling its pack. The facility is testing them too, testing how they adapt to us. They'd reached a junction where the corridor split into 3 paths. The predators quickly blocked 2 paths, leaving only the central route clear. Suddenly, one of the creatures broke formation, charging directly at them. Tom spun to face it, his knife ready, but Crystal pulled him back. Wait, look at its attack pattern. The creature stopped short, not actually attacking. It was a test, seeing how they would react. They're not just testing our physical abilities, Tom said, understanding dawning. They're testing our ability to recognize patterns, to understand their behavior. Crystal's sensors whirred. The facility wants to see how we adapt to them as they adapt to us. A mutual evolution experiment. They continued down the forced path, each challenge becoming more complex. The predators began working in coordinated pairs, then in complex group formations. Each time, Tom and Crystal had to adapt their defense strategy. Your physical skills complement my analytical abilities, Crystal noted after they successfully evaded another coordinated attack. Perhaps this is what the facility wanted to observe. Tom wiped sweat from his forehead. Yeah, how's that? Two different evolutionary paths working together, creating something greater than the sum of their parts. The corridor ahead opened into a massive chamber. The predators herded them through the entrance, then retreated, sealing the way behind them. The primary testing chamber was a vast circular room filled with suspended animation pods. Most were empty, but some contained partially formed creatures, failed experiments from centuries past. In the center of the chamber, a massive holographic display activated. It showed hundreds of worlds, thousands of species, all connected in a complex web of genetic manipulation and evolutionary guidance. "Welcome, survivors," a voice echoed through the chamber, neither human nor crystalline. "You have proven yourselves worthy of the final test." Tom and Crystal stood ready, knowing that everything they'd faced so far had been merely preparation. The real trial was about to begin. The voice echoed through the primary testing chamber, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Around Tom and Crystal, the suspended animation pods glowed with a faint blue light, casting eerie shadows through the mist that covered the floor. "Your arrival was inevitable," the voice continued. "We have waited centuries for species that could reach this point." Tom kept his hand near his knife, eyes scanning for threats. "Who are we?" A new hologram appeared in the chamber center. It showed a being that seemed to be both organic and crystalline at the same time, like a missing link between humans and Crystal's species. "We are the architects," the voice said. "We seeded the galaxy with life, guided evolution, and watched as our experiments grew." Crystal moved closer to the hologram, their form resonating with recognition. "The ancient texts of my people, they spoke of creators who shaped our world." "Yes," the voice confirmed. "Your species was designed to be perfect observers, logical, unchanging, eternal. You were to watch over our other experiments." Tom laughed darkly. "Let me guess. We humans were supposed to be something else entirely." The hologram shifted, showing early human history. "Your species was designed to be adaptable warriors, protectors of the weaker races. But something unexpected happened." Multiple displays activated, showing crucial moments in human history. Each time humans faced extinction, they survived in unexpected ways. "You evolved beyond your programming," the voice explained. "Where other species followed their design paths, humans constantly broke their patterns. You turned weaknesses into strengths. You survived when our models said you should fail." Crystal's form pulsed with surprise. "And my people? We were considered a failure because we followed our programming too perfectly." "Correct." The hologram showed Crystal's civilization. Beautiful, ordered, but unchanging. You became stagnant, unable to break free from your logical patterns. Until now. Tom understood. "That's why you brought us here together. You wanted to see if we could change each other." The chamber's lights brightened, and the mist cleared. The pods around them contained new forms, creatures that combined human adaptability with crystalline perfection. "These were our attempts to create the perfect species," the voice said. "All failed. We discovered that perfection cannot be engineered. It must evolve naturally." Crystal moved to examine one of the pods. The predators outside. They were not just tests. They were failed attempts to combine our species' traits. Indeed, the hologram showed the predators' creation. They have the adaptability of humans and the logical coordination of your people. But they lack the one thing we couldn't program: Choice. Tom stepped forward. That's what this is really about, isn't it? You wanted to see if we would choose to work together, despite our differences. The voice seemed pleased. The final test was never about survival. It was about understanding. Your species were meant to be opposites, eternal observers and adaptive warriors. Instead, you have become something more. The sealed data drives they carried suddenly activated, projecting their contents. Both contained the same information, ancient records about the facility and its true purpose. Your governments discovered this place decades ago, the voice explained. They understood that revealing the truth too quickly would destroy both your civilizations, so they arranged this meeting, this controlled discovery. Crystal's form dimmed slightly. All this time, we thought ourselves superior to humans because of our perfect logic. Yet it was our very perfection that made us fail. And we humans thought we were special because we survived against the odds, Tom added. But we were just doing what we were designed to do, even when we broke the design. The chamber center opened, revealing a platform rising from below. On it sat two objects, a crystalline shard, and what looked like an ancient human artifact. These contained the full truth of your origins, the voice said. But be warned, knowledge is a weapon sharper than any blade. How you choose to use it will determine the future of both your species. Tom and Crystal looked at each other, understanding the weight of the moment. Everything they thought they knew about their civilizations was about to change. The real test, the voice concluded, begins now. The crystalline shard and ancient human artifact floated on the platform, each pulsing with their own inner light. As Tom and Crystal approached, the chamber's atmosphere changed. The air itself seemed to thicken with energy. Before you make your choice, the voice of the architect said, you must meet those who have watched your progress. The air around them shimmered, and three forms materialized. Each was like the hologram they'd seen earlier, beings that were both crystalline and organic. But these weren't projections. They were real. The architects, Crystal whispered, their form vibrating with awe. You're still alive. We are the last, the tallest architect said. Unlike the facility's voice, this one spoke with clear emotion. We have waited here, watching every test, every failure, and every success. Tom stood his ground, studying them. Why reveal yourselves now? Why not just leave the records for us to find? The second architect moved forward, its form shifting between solid and crystalline states, because the greatest test is not in finding the truth, but in choosing what to do with it. The third architect gestured, and new holograms filled the air around them. They showed hundreds of worlds, thousands of species. Most were extinct. We created many races, the first architect explained. Some to be warriors, others to be scholars, builders, or peacekeepers. Each had their purpose. But purpose became prison. The second one continued. Species bound by their programming could not truly evolve. They either died out or became frozen in their ways. Crystal's form dimmed. Like my people, we became exactly what you designed us to be. And that was our failure. No, the third architect corrected. Your people preserved knowledge, maintained order. You did not fail. You simply stopped growing. Tom watched the holograms, seeing the pattern. And humans, we were supposed to be warriors, but we became something else. The first architect nodded. You became everything. Warriors, scholars, builders, destroyers, dreamers. You broke every pattern we designed. Which is why both your species are now at a crucial point, the second architect said. Humanity's chaos and Crystal's people's order. Together, they could achieve something we never could. The chamber's lights pulsed, and the predators they'd faced earlier appeared in containment fields around the room. But they were changing, their forms shifting between metallic and crystalline, organic and artificial. These creatures represent our attempt to force evolution, the third architect explained. To manually combine the traits of both your species. They are powerful, but empty. They have no choice, no true consciousness. But you too, the first architect said, looking at Tom and Crystal, have shown that voluntary cooperation between your kinds is possible. That growth can come from choice rather than design. The artifacts on the platform began to glow brighter. The crystalline shard floated toward Crystal, while the human artifact drifted toward Tom. These contain the complete knowledge of our work, the second architect said. The true history of all species, all experiments, the power to understand your own design, and the power to break it. But with understanding comes responsibility. The third architect warned. Some would use this knowledge to claim superiority. Others would use it to justify war. And some would deny the truth entirely, clinging to their own myths of origin. Tom looked at Crystal. They're asking us to decide the fate of both our species. Crystal's form shifted thoughtfully, not just decided, but guided, to help both our peoples understand the truth without destroying themselves with it. The first architect stepped forward. Now you understand the final test. Not whether you could find the truth, but whether you have the wisdom to know what to do with it. The artifacts hung before them, waiting. Around them, the predators watched with their glowing eyes, living reminders of what forced evolution could create. The choice must be unanimous, the architects said in unison. Both of you must agree on how to proceed. And you must understand, there is no right answer, only consequences. Tom and Crystal faced each other, knowing their decision would change everything. The truth about their origins, their purpose, and their potential lay literally within their grasp. The real question was, were their species ready for it? Tom and Crystal stood before the glowing artifacts, the weight of two civilizations' futures hanging in the balance. The three architects watched silently, their forms casting shifting shadows across the chamber floor. If we take this knowledge, Tom said slowly, there's no going back. Both our worlds change forever. Crystal's form pulsed thoughtfully. Perhaps that's exactly what both our species need. They turned to Tom. Your people thrive on change. Mine are dying from the lack of it. The predators in their containment fields had grown still, their eyes fixed on the moment of decision. Even they seemed to understand the importance of what was about to happen. Tom reached for the human artifact. We do it together. Not just taking the knowledge, but sharing it. Helping both our peoples understand gradually. Agreed, Crystal said, their form brightening. Not as a weapon or a source of power, but as a bridge between our worlds. They each grasped their respective artifacts at the same time. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Knowledge flooded their minds, images, data, understanding beyond anything they had imagined. Tom saw the true history of humanity, not just as warriors, but as an experiment in unlimited potential. Every hardship his species had faced had been designed to forge them into something new, something unprecedented. Crystal experienced the complete history of their people, not just as observers, but as living records of all the architects' work. Their perfect logic and unchanging nature hadn't been a flaw, but a foundation waiting for the right catalyst to spark evolution. The architects spoke in unison. You have chosen wisdom over power, understanding over advantage. This is why you were chosen. The chamber's lights shifted, and new holograms appeared, showing possible futures. In one, humans and Crystal's people worked together, combining adaptation with preservation, chaos with order. In another, they remained separate, each growing stronger from understanding their true nature. There is no single right path forward, the first architect said. Only the paths you choose to create, the second added. And the wisdom to walk them together, the third concluded. Tom looked at the knowledge flowing through his mind. We can't just reveal everything at once. It would cause panic, maybe even war. Crystal nodded. We need a plan, a way to prepare both our peoples for the truth. The predators in their containment fields began to change again, but this time it was different. They were becoming something new. Not forced combinations of traits, but truly unique creatures, born from understanding rather than engineering. Your first test as guardians of this knowledge, the architect said, will be returning to your worlds carrying truth, but knowing when to reveal it. Tom checked his suit's systems. Our ships are destroyed. How do we? Before he could finish, part of the chamber wall shifted, revealing a hangar. Inside sat two ships, one designed for humans, one for Crystal's people. But they were different from any vessels either had seen before, combining the best of both their technologies. You will return as heroes who survived a crash, the first architect explained, who worked together to endure a hostile world. The seeds of cooperation will be planted, the second continued. Trust will grow naturally. And when the time is right, the third finished, the full truth can emerge. The predators were released from their fields, but they no longer showed any aggression. They had evolved beyond their programming, just as the architects had hoped all their creations would. Remember, the architect said, beginning to fade, you were not chosen because you were perfect. You were chosen because you could become more than your design. Tom and Crystal made their way to the ships, each carrying their artifact and the burden of knowledge it contained. The predators followed, now guardians rather than hunters. See you on the other side, Tom asked. Crystal's form glowed with new purpose. Indeed, we have much work to do. As their ships lifted off, carrying them back to their respective worlds, the facility began to change. Not shutting down, but evolving, becoming something new, just like all the architects' successful experiments. They had come as crash survivors seeking escape. They left as guardians of a truth that would change everything. And somewhere in the facility, the architects smiled, knowing their greatest experiment was finally, truly beginning. The end.